Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel for another video. Today I thought I would do a Guam related video. So we have been living in Guam now for going on a year and a half. I think next month or the month after we're going to be hitting a year and a half. So we've been here a little bit of a hot minute now. So I thought I would do a video for you guys about what we've learned or what I've learned while living in Guam here for the past year. All of the good and the bad that comes with it. For those who are PCSing and are just curious about the random facts and things that I came up with and what they might be walking into coming here. So I have come up with 5 things or 5 categories of things that have surprised me or that I learned or expected and so on. So let's get into it. The first thing that surprised me is driving. Anyone who's close to me knows that I hate to drive. I hate learning how to drive in a new place, and I hate not knowing where I'm going. My sense of direction is awful. Ask my husband. He teases me about it all the time. But it is really easy to drive here. Granted, we are on a very small island, so you can drive from one end to the other in like an hour. So it's really, really hard to get lost. We have one main road called Marine Corps Drive that goes from like the Navy base all the way up to Anderson, so which is the Air Force base. So it's really hard to get lost. If you do get lost, you just start driving and eventually you're gonna see a landmark that you recognize. So that is the first thing. It's not that hard to drive here. The second thing is the radio stations. They are god-awful here. You are gonna be needing some Spotify, some Pandora, whatever, because we are living in the dark ages. The radio stations here go from like oldies to covers to new stuff, reggae. The order of the stations don't ever make sense. Like when you listen to the radio in the States, they have like a country radio station, they have, you know, a rap, a rock. That's not like that here. Every radio station is just a hodgepodge of everything, and half the time it's awful and we just turn off the radio. So definitely invest in Spotify or Pandora if you're gonna be living over here. The next thing that has to do with driving is nobody pulls over for emergency vehicles here. In the States, I thought that was like the law or like good rule of thumb. You're supposed to pull over if there's like an ambulance coming up behind you. Here, no one pulls over. I hope to God that I am never riding in that ambulance. I need to get to the hospital because yeah, nobody pulls over. They are just like speeding and they're just weaving in and out of traffic because no one's getting over. Another thing that's important to know is driving here. As a spouse, you are supposed to get a Guam license. You have so many days once you get here to switch over your license. Now, if you're like me and breaking the law, I chose not to do that. It is, depending on what state you live in, I've heard that it's very difficult. Not everyone recognizes Guam as a valid license. And so sometimes if you get a Guam license while here and then you go back to the States, they make you retake the driving test or the exam, and I'm just not about that, so I just keep my actual license, and I know a lot of people who do that, but to each their own. I believe, oh, one more thing, sorry, I have notes down here so I don't miss anything. One more thing about driving here is the speed limits. They don't make sense. There are sections where it's like 25 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour, and that's typical throughout the island. It doesn't typically go higher than that. And everyone speeds because the speed limits don't make sense. And so if you're someone who goes the speed limit, people are going to be riding your butt or they're going to be flying past you and passing you. There's no way to get around it. So that's another thing to note. And a lot of the time they like to set up speed traps on island, and they'll be a lot of the times really close to naval base. Not to say that they're out to get us, but sometimes it seems like it. So just be aware. So that covers my first category, driving. The second category I wanted to cover is our winter. Our winter is the rainy season / typhoon season. So from end of June, July timeframe all the way to like December January timeframe is our rainy season. And that's not to say that it's going to rain every single day, although sometimes it seems like it, but not all day. So basically it could be like torrential downpouring and then be sunny the rest of the day, but it is torrential downpouring. It reminds me a lot of living in Washington, which is obviously where I'm from, and it rains just as much there as it does here. However, there it's like a mist rain, and here it's like, think movie scene when you walk outside and you are drenched head to toe. That's how it is here. We just finally bought umbrellas yesterday after living here this long, but we were like, we need to invest in umbrellas. So just know. And the other thing about the rainy season and the rain is it could start raining and it moves so fast. So you could walk into the next, it not be raining. You walk out and it's torrential downpouring, but if you wait and stand under cover for 5 to 10 minutes, the rain passes. So it comes and goes just as fast. So that's one thing to note. With rainy season comes some pests. We deal with gnats in the house during rainy season. It's the grossest thing. We have the cleanest house, but they're almost like these like fruit fly looking gnats, but they're not fruit flies. And they will cover the doors and baseboard molding of your entire house. Last August, we left on emergency leave to go back home and came back, and it looked like we had an infestation that happened, and they weren't alive. So they're just like dead gnats that are along every baseboard of the house, and it took like hour, 2 hours to clean. But that's something that we struggle with in rainy season. I haven't learned how to avoid it yet. Maybe we'll see how this season goes, but just know that gnats are common. I believe that covers my winter category. The third category is that everybody has, not everybody per se, but a lot of people have a negative outlook on Guam. I see it all the time on the spouses page. They'll have someone that joins the spouses page asking that they're up for orders and they're considering whether to go and stay in Hawaii or come to Guam. Or they're already in Hawaii and they're thinking about coming to Guam. And everybody just throws negative attitude at them and tells them, don't come to island, don't, like, it's horrible, this and that. And I try to be like the voice of Guam because it's really not that bad here and there is so much to do. Now, I think the negative outlook on Guam comes from a lot of things. First off, the resources. So if you're someone who's EFMP, if you have like any medical needs, extra mental health, you really like your shopping, Target, Amazon Prime, all of that, like resources for that are few and far here. There's not a lot of specialty medical, there's not a lot of help for mental health, and obviously no 2-day shipping with Amazon. So the resources for stuff like that are, like I said, far and few. So if you're someone who needs extra care, then the island's probably not for you. However, if you're someone who's just wanting something new, adventure, you like living where it's warm, you like the beaches, Guam is a great place. It makes you realize that you don't need all of these big things in life. I've learned to like slim down and not need as much. And yeah, there's so much to do. We've been here on Guam, like I said, 1.5 years almost now, and we have still yet to check everything off our bucket list. There's so much to do. You have beaches, not just one beach, multiple beaches. We bought the PHR pass, so there's multiple hotels that you can go do pool days. There's hikes we still haven't completed. There are tourist locations. There are restaurants to try. What else? There's the food trucks. There's Chamorro Village that just opened up. So there's so much to do, and I think the people who complain about it are the people who don't really get out of their house and explore and seek those things out. So I highly recommend, I don't know, to get out of your headspace if you have a really negative headspace and put yourself out there and take advantage of those things, because I think you'll really learn to love the island. Let's see. I also wanted to note that with it being a small island, I feel like I have a stronger sense of community here than I ever did in Washington or like our last duty station, because it's a small island and there is not a lot of family around. It's so expensive to travel off island. We kind of lean on each other more. I have become really close with those at my job, the families. With Rowdy, he volunteers for Boy Scouts, so volunteering. I just became the ombudsman for our command. For those, I haven't really shared that on my channel yet. So really becoming a community and joining different aspects of things on the island really helps to build my community so I don't feel alone, since I am so far from family and alone in that aspect. I built my own family here, and I have the biggest sense of community that I've ever had at any station. So put yourself out there. And yeah, I don't understand where the negative outlook on Guam comes from. The fourth thing, which is a downfall, is the cost of living is high. And the reason this surprised me is I obviously expected the cost of living to be high. We're on an island, just like Hawaii, things are more expensive. But it's a little more extreme than that. So the first one being the grocery stores. So we mainly shop at the commissary because that is one of the cheapest places to shop for groceries. Out in town, we have a bunch of different places, cost you less, pay less, which is like the big grocery stores. However, things off base are double the price. So for example, we couldn't find Jimmy Dean sausage last week at the commissary, and normally for like a pack of Jimmy Dean sausage, it's $4. We went out in town to get it for this dip that we were making for an event, and it was double the price. So it was $8, so a 50% markup. And that's just one item. So I can only imagine if I had to do all my shopping off base. I don't even know how locals are surviving. But the problem that I say with that is the commissary, and I know that COVID was used as an excuse and supply chains and stuff like that, but they're always out of everything, like horribly out of everything. And maybe I could try to like insert a couple pictures here for you guys. Just to like give you a reference, because it's really bad. And so half the time you write your grocery list and you can't find half of the things on your list, so then you're forced to go out in town and pay those higher prices. And I've heard that it's like that at a lot of places right now, or commissaries. Like I shared this post about how we're out of everything in the pictures, and a girl I went to school with, who is, her husband and her are stationed in Hawaii, and she mentioned that it's the same there. The only difference there is that they have bigger retail grocers to go out and source and shop at, where we don't really have that here. Our cheapest and easiest place to shop is the commissary. So that definitely raises our cost of living. Back in the States, I could spend $200, $150, $200 for 2 weeks of groceries. That includes lunch, dinners, breakfasts, all of that. Here we are spending roughly $150 a week on groceries, if we're lucky, sometimes more. And that's not even buying any like fruit or anything like that. That stuff is so expensive here. In addition to the cost of living, if you live out in town, electricity is horrendous. I know people who are paying an upwards of $800 to $1,000 a month on electricity. And starting this next month, or in the next couple weeks, there's going to be a 50% increase. So they're already paying $800 to $1,000, and now they're going to be a 50% markup. So that's so bad. And the horrible thing about that is we are very fortunate we live on base. If you live on base, you don't have to pay utilities. So we don't pay our water, we don't pay our electricity, garbage, all of that. So we can run our AC as low as we want, and we don't feel the cost of it. But if you so choose to live off base, they have put in a new stipulation that you cannot choose to move back on base. So if you decide to live out in town and you hate it and you want to live on base, they won't allow you to move on base. So these people who chose to live off base, not realizing the cost of electricity, are now put in a sucky situation where maybe they're a new sailor who doesn't make as much as some of the other more, people who have been in longer, and they're struggling to pay their electricity bill. Because we do get COLA and you get utility allowance if you live out in town, but with the way that prices are skyrocketing, pretty soon they're not going to be enough to cover that electricity bill. So just something to mention if you're considering living off base or moving to Guam. Let's see. The fifth and final thing that I wanted to mention about things that I learned in Guam is the pest situation. So before coming to Guam, everyone warned me about how bad the spider and snake situation was. Now, I was expecting that I was like terrified. I hate snakes. I hate spiders even more. And I'm expecting that I'm going to see them everywhere because everyone's like, they're overrun on the island. Now, let me tell you, I have seen one snake the entire time that I've been on Guam. And that was we were driving at night. So it was nighttime in the abandoned neighborhood that we take the back way home. And it was like in the road. That's the only time I've ever seen a snake. And now I've hiked multiple hikes through the forest and whatnot. So take that, don't be as terrified. They're fear-mongering you. Now the spider situation is a little worse. I have never seen them in my house or anything like that. They do get pretty big. I've seen some giant spiders, so if you're terrified of spiders, fair warning. And I have seen a couple on the outside of my house, but typically if I see one, we just take the hose and I'll spray down the house. And there are a lot of spiders if you go hiking through the jungle. I always make Rowdy walk in front and take his stick so that I don't have the risk of walking through a spider web because I'd freak out. And yeah, so just know that spiders, snakes, granted, living on base, they do treat on base. Along all of the fences living on base, they have snake traps. Kind of gross, but you'll see they put mice in them to attract the snakes, and they have people you'll see emptying them. So I'm sure they're catching snakes, but they're catching them before they get into the neighborhoods, so we're not dealing with that. Out in town, I'm sure is a whole nother story. I have heard of coworkers dealing with snakes, and I had a friend who lived off base and actually had one come out of her sink. So take as you will. Living off base, you run the risk of seeing them, but living on base, and my personal experience is I've only seen one the entire time I've been on Guam. Now, the pest that we do deal with is toads. We have giant toads. You'll see them in your yards. If you plant anything outside, they like to get in your beds. Just heads up. Little lizard salamander things, you're gonna see them everywhere, so hopefully those don't freak you out. They're harmless. I've seen them get in the house occasionally, little ones, and you'll see them like around your doors and stuff like that. And the other issue that we've had is shrews. We had an issue with our garage not being properly insulated. The molding around the garage wasn't properly sealed, and so they were coming into the garage, and we dealt with that a few months ago, but they replaced the entire lining of our garage, and we haven't had an issue since. So those are the pests that we've really had a handling on. But yeah, that is the 5 categories and 5 things that I learned while living in Guam, or were new or didn't expect and wanted to share with you guys. So if you guys found this video helpful, give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment if you're going to be moving to Guam, or if you agree, or you have any other things that you feel like you learned while living here. Let me know in the comments down below, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more content, and I will see you guys next Friday for another video. Bye guys!